everyone, it's Mafalda and these are my favorite memories with books. So I got the idea for this video from two different booktubers that I really love watching. The first one was Olivia from Stories for Coffee. She did a video about all of her favorite books that she owns and all of the memories that she has attached to those books. And similarly, a couple of months ago, Books with Leo also did a video about her favorite memories with books. And I loved both of those videos and learning more about them through the books that they have and they own. And it was just so much fun, so I thought I would do the same thing. I will leave both of these videos linked down below so you can check them out. And so I went through my whole book collection and tried to find some books that had some good memories attached to them, and I thought I would share with you all. So let's start. I thought of putting all of these books in chronological order, but honestly I'm the worst with dates and I couldn't pinpoint some of the years that I got these books. So I just thought I would do it randomly, but they're all from like 2012 to 2019. And yeah, I'm just gonna start sharing now. So the first book that I have to show here is one that I've shown a couple of times, well, actually a lot of times on my channel, because this is one of my favorite series, and it's The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is the first book in the Diviners series. And the reason why I got this book is because in 2012, I discovered the booktube community online when I first started reading. I don't know how I stumbled upon the booktube community, but I just stumbled upon it, and I watched like Ariel and Jessie and Pullin and Banana books, and oh my god, so many of the OG booktubers, and I watched all of them, and I was low-key obsessed with the community and I really wanted to join, but I just wasn't brave enough and it wasn't the right time and everything, and so I was just kind of like a bystander to the community. I would comment on a lot of videos and I kind of made some friends in the beginning of the community, like smaller booktubers, and there was one that I used to watch, and I don't think she makes videos anymore, but she was a Spanish booktuber that made videos in English, and there was one time where she did a giveaway. And I was one of the people that commented and I won the giveaway. And so I got a chance to buy a book from Book Depository, and this book was being talked about a lot at the time in the community, so I was just like, why not? And yeah, it's so funny, I got this book in a giveaway on BookTube from a booktuber that probably doesn't even exist anymore. I still remember her face and her name and everything, but I don't think she makes videos anymore. And yeah, I won the giveaway, I got this book, and I got it kind of on a whim because I didn't really know what it talked about. And actually I had this book for so many years in my collection, and I think I only read this book in 2019, so it took me like 7 years to read this book, and then it became one of my favorite series and my favorite characters and everything. And yeah, I kept thinking when I was reading that, oh my god, I got this book in a booktube giveaway that was really random, and it's just so funny. And also I got this beautiful cover, which I love so much, and I never find this cover because this was probably one of the first covers for the Diviners, and I kind of wish they had like kept this theme all throughout the series, because we know that the covers changed and they turned terrible, but I love this book so much. The pages of this book are pretty yellow and they have a bunch of stains all throughout because, you know, mold and stuff, and it's set in my room for 7 years, so that is why this book is pretty old. And then I read it and I fell in love, and it was so great, and I cherish this book with my whole heart because it is so old. And this book just kind of reminds me that I've been kind of in the book community for so long, like ever since it started basically. Then I kind of like fell along the way because I stopped watching it, but that's a whole other story for another video. But yeah, this just reminds me of the good old days of 2012, 2013 booktube, and yeah, I love it. And now, keeping with the theme of Libba Bray, I have A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray, and I've talked about this book a lot on my channel. Well, not a lot, but in the beginning I talked about it once or twice, and it is because I read this book in Portuguese. Like you can see, this is the Portuguese version, and I kind of picked it up on a whim as well. Like I hadn't heard anyone talk about it. Oh my god, so much dust. So much dust. I kind of picked it up with no opinions about this book whatsoever. I just saw the cover, it looked interesting. I didn't even connect that this was the same writer as the Diviner's writer, so yeah, I didn't even know who Libba Bray was. And I read this book and I loved it so much, and then I was instantly compelled to read the second book, and I had to wait for the translation to come out. So I waited, and then it came out. The translations here are always delayed by at least a couple of months, sometimes years, so I had to wait a little bit for the second book, and then it came out, the translated version as well. I also have it, and it had the same like cover and everything. And then I also read the second book and loved it, and we never got a translation for the third book. So that means that I have never finished this trilogy because we never got the translation for the third book, and then I just like, I waited for a couple of years, then I figured out that it wasn't coming, so I don't know, I never finished it, and it kind of makes me mad, but at the same time now it's been like 7 or 8 years and now I don't remember the books anymore. I just remember that I like them. So that is not technically a happy memory with the book, but I just remember the wait that I had for the third book, and then it was like a couple of years later and I was like, is the book coming out? And yeah, I figured out that it wasn't coming out, so they never translated the third book. I never read it. Maybe one day for a video I'll read the third book with no context of the other 2 books just to see if I remember anything. But yeah, that is another memory that I have with a Libba Bray book, and it is not the best one, but it's still funny to recall me waiting for the third book to come out, and then it never did, and I still have the first 2 books in the series in my collection because I really like them, and I maybe one day will read the third book, the English version obviously. So yeah, that is another memory that I have. Now the third book that I have to show you is a booktube staple, and it's The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And the reason why I have a memory with this book is because, well, not only did this book impact my teenage years so much, this was my whole life for a couple of years, and also because this was the first time that I remember seeing a book online, like in the booktube community and everything. Like, everyone was talking about this book when it came out, and obviously I wanted to read it as well. And then I went to the bookstore, and I went to the English section of the bookstore, and the book was there, and it was kind of a new release at the time. I don't even know when this book came out, but I remember that it had been out for a couple of months, and it was the first time that I found a new release at a bookstore, and I was just so excited to see this book there because I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna get to participate in the hype online about this book, and it was just so fun. And I remember the car ride home with my mom, just me holding the book and be like, oh my god, this is my biggest like prized possession, because I had found a new book like at the bookstore, and it was just such a big moment for me, and I remember that day so well. And like I was saying, I still cherish this book a lot because it meant a lot to me for like a couple of years, and I just have a lot of good memories attached to this and all of the friends that I made through John Green's books. And yeah, it's just the best. 2014 was a year, or 2013 even, was a year, and I loved it. Also, I think this was probably my first hardcover, because this is the hardcover of the book, and oh my god, it's so dirty, but yeah, it is here. And I think this was my first hardcover of my collection. Now the next book is one that I feel like I don't talk enough on my channel, and it's Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I need to reread this book like desperately, because for so long, like, this was the book that I said was my favorite book of all time. And it's really weird because science fiction isn't really my type of book anymore, but this book meant so much to me for so long as well. And I considered it my favorite book of all time for lots of years, and that is because when I read it, I actually read the ebook first, and when I read it, I just remember I couldn't put it down. It was during the summer, I was with my family, and I just couldn't stop reading, and it was probably one of the first instances where I was like, oh my god, reading is so addictive, because this was like in the first like 2 years when I started reading, and I just remember being so gripped to this book. I love the plot twists at the end, and I just loved this world, and I couldn't stop reading, and I was obsessed. And I need to reread this book because ever since I first read it in like 2012, 2011, I haven't read it since, and I got a physical copy since then because I read the ebook. And yeah, I need to reread this book because I just remember being so obsessed with this world and the characters and all the references. I loved the pop culture references in this book, and yeah, I just remember loving this book, being so gripped to the story. I wouldn't even talk to my family because I was just like, let me read, and I was obsessed and I need to reread it. And I still consider this one of my favorite books, but in like a top 15 maybe. Not my favorite book of all time anymore, but it still means a lot to me, and I love this cover also. And also the movie disappointed me, but that's another topic. Now the next book is a graphic novel, and it's The People Inside by Ray Fox, and I got this book in 2014 I think, and I got it at a comic book convention that happens here every year. It's like kind of close to my house, so I went there with my dad, and I remember that day super well because it was the first time that I went to that kind of— it's not really like a convention, it's more like a comic book and graphic novel museum, and then it has like some stores also. And I got this book there, and I just saw the cover and I saw the colors, and I kind of flipped through the book and I was like, I'm just gonna get this one. And I think that was the only book that I got when I went there. Oh my god, the dust is everywhere. And then afterwards I came home and I read the book and I sobbed because this book is literally so depressing, but at the same time, at the time I was 16 and I was also not doing well, and I kind of felt at the time that this book kind of reflected what I was feeling, that was very dark, and I was not having a good time at 16. Let's not talk about it. I think no one does. And I just remember being like so connected to this book, and I just remember sobbing. And this is such a depressing but also so imaginative graphic novel. Please check the trigger warnings for this if there are any, because this book is not well known. I just picked it up because I liked the cover and I was like, why not? But the way that this is told is that each square is telling a different story. So basically, as you flip through, you can kind of like absorb all of the stories at once, or you can just follow one of the squares and go through the story of those characters, of the people inside, all throughout. And the thing that is depressing about this book is that as people die in the stories, the squares start turning black, and then at the end it's basically all black. This is kind of a spoiler, but at the same time it's still a fascinating read. It was so different from anything I've ever read, and I remember reading it once, like going through all of the squares at once, and then on another read I just went through all of the like single stories like separately, and it was so fascinating, and it was so different, and it was so dark, and I was feeling dark. And yeah, I just really connected to this book, and I have a lot of good memories of getting this with my dad. And yeah, I still have this book, have not read it since, but I still hold it dear to my heart because of the memories attached to it. Now, another book that I got in 2014 that I've already mentioned and showed on my channel a couple of times is The Blood of Olympus, the final book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. And this is the Waterstones exclusive edition, and it includes some like bonus stuff, and the book is bigger than all of my other Heroes of Olympus books, which are back here. And honestly, this was such an impulsive buy, but I got this book in London. I was staying there for a couple of days with my family, and I went to Waterstones, and I knew that this book had been out for like a month or something, or less than a month even. I think this was a new release, and I still hadn't gotten it. I was anticipating it because I was keeping up with the series, and so I literally went into Waterstones, and on the first table. Like, I remember I walked in and like on the second table at the store, like at the beginning of the store, there was this book and I was just like, oh my god, it's mine, and I got it and I paid for it. It was such an impulsive buy, and maybe if I had seen if there were other editions, because I really don't like this edition of the book. It was just like such an impulsive buy. I was in London, I wanted to get a book, and I saw this one and I was like, I need to get it, and it's so big. Like, this is bigger than my head. Like, this is huge, and yeah, this is an exclusive edition and everything. That's fun, but at the same time, I don't know what was going through my head. I was also going through a lot of stuff at the time. 2014 was a very weird year for me, and I don't know, it was super impulsive, and I don't like this cover. But now that I have this memory of getting the book, like, I have a bad memory. I didn't really mention this at first, but I have a really bad memory. So when I have a memory of something like actually playing in my head, I just can't get rid of that stuff, because I think if I get rid of this book, for example, I will lose the memory of impulsively buying this book in London in 2014. So yeah, I just can't get rid of this massive ugly book, and I just think that's a really funny memory that I have with this book. So even though I hate this book, I also like this book because of the memory that I have with it, I guess. Now, the next book that I have here is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is a Portuguese version that I have of the book. This was the first Agatha Christie that I've ever read, and I'm still kind of collecting them, and it all started with this book. And I decided to talk about this book today because I used to have a local bookstore that was very short-lived, and this is the only book that I got at that bookstore. It was literally 5 minutes walking from my house, and I didn't appreciate that bookstore, and it eventually closed like a couple of months later, and this was the only book that I got there, and I just missed that bookstore. So that's why I decided to mention this book. This is kind of like a piece of history when I had a bookstore close to my house, which I don't anymore, unfortunately, and I should have been more grateful about that bookstore, because it lasted only like a year maybe, or a couple of months, and I only got one book there. And if I had a bookstore close to my house today, I would literally buy a book every single week there just to keep them alive, and just to have a bookstore close to my house. Like, oh, that's so great. And also, I really liked this book. This was the first Agatha Christie that I've read, and I also think this is kind of like a special edition of the book. It's a hardcover, and all of my other Agatha Christie books are different versions. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I just remember getting this book from my local bookstore and being happy, and I miss those days. Now, the next book I think I got in 2015, and I kind of wish that I knew where I got this book. I just know that I got it at an airport, but I don't really know where, and I have been trying to remember it, but I honestly don't know. I don't even know where I went in 2015. But yeah, I got this book at an airport, and it was also an impulsive buy, but I loved the book so much, and it was Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy, and I've already talked about this book on my channel a couple of times. But yeah, I was at an airport. I needed something to read because I think we had like a connecting flight. That's all I remember. I don't know where it was, but I got this book at an airport, and I was bored. I wanted a book. I went to one of the many bookstores that they had, and I saw this one. I liked the cover, and I saw the Costa Book Award winner sticker for 2014, and I was intrigued because of that. Like, if it's a winner, it's probably a good book. So I just decided to pick it up at an airport, something that I never do. This was probably the only book that I bought at an airport. Not only are they more expensive, but also I'm always carrying a book, but this day I wasn't, and I got this one, and then I read it, and I love this book. This is such an underrated read, because this is about an old woman who is trying to find her friend Elizabeth, but at the same time that old woman has like dementia and she keeps forgetting stuff. So it's kind of like her trying to solve a mystery, but at the same time she can't remember anything. So it's a really challenging read, and it was super different from anything I had ever read at the time, and even today, honestly, I don't read a lot of mysteries and thrillers, so this was such a different read for me. I truly trusted the Costa Book Awards, and I was like, I'm gonna give this one a try, and it was such a great book. And I remember picking this one up at an airport, and I just have never done that since, so I thought it was interesting. And now we've reached university, and this is probably a book that I've never shown on my channel, but I read on my first year of university on my bachelor's degree, and I read David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. This is the Portuguese version. This is a big book, and I had to read this for a literature class, and I actually really enjoyed this book. It really surprised me, and I need to read more Charles Dickens. And why am I mentioning this book? Because this is a book that I read for a literature class, and I wasn't doing a literature degree in university. I actually have a media studies degree, so kind of like communications and all of that. And I actually had a mandatory literature class that I had on my first year, like everyone had to take it, and I don't really know why that is, but I love that class, obviously. Like, now I'm taking a literature master's, and this class where I read David Copperfield was kind of one of the reasons why I figured out that that bachelor's wasn't for me and that I needed to pursue literature, because I just loved reading this book in class and annotating it and analyzing it, and I just fell in love with literature because I obviously loved books at the time, but I never really considered, well, I considered it, but I always pushed it to the back of my mind that I wanted a literature degree. And yeah, then I read David Copperfield, which at first I wasn't really happy about. Like, I don't want to read this for class. And then I also, like, not only did I have to read a 700-page book, but also I had to kind of know the book to answer test questions and everything, because I had an exam about it. And yeah, it wasn't my favorite at the time, but at the same time I don't know, I fell in love with analyzing books, and I just loved my experience of reading this. I was probably one of the only people in my class that actually read this whole book, because a lot of people just saw like synopsis and like little short summaries of the book online. But honestly, I was just like super invested in the book. I really enjoyed it, even though I don't think I would have picked this book up if it wasn't for class. But yeah, I just have fond memories of reading David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, which is a very odd thing for me, but I just really enjoyed my time with it. And then after that class, I also took some other elective literature classes in my bachelor's, and yeah, that really decided it for me, but it started with David Copperfield. And all the last books that I want to talk about are from my Erasmus program. So I went to live and study in Belgium for like 6 months during my bachelor's degree, and I went there from 2018 to 2019, and I spent a couple of months there. And obviously when I was there, I was reading in my spare time. Obviously I had classes and I had to cook and clean and everything because I was leaving on my own with my boyfriend. First of all, I just want to say that I loved the experience of living abroad kind of on my own, and it was a great experience. I don't think I've ever talked about it on my channel. So yeah, when I was there, I was reading. I had brought some books from home. I also had my Kobo where I had some like ebooks to read. I remember reading Turtles All the Way Down while I was there. I also read Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race there. I read that on a train. I remember it so clearly. And every month I had a budget for food and for rent and to travel if I wanted to and all of that. And at the end of the month, I never really had that much money to spend on other things, and so I never really bought a lot of books while I was there. I was there for 5 or 6 months, and I only bought 2 books, and those are the 2 books that I have here. I remember I bought these, I think around Christmas or after Christmas. I had some spare money at the end of the month, and I just went to Fnac. Also, by the way, I was in Leuven in Belgium, and that is a city that is just outside of Brussels, and I loved Leuven so much. I miss it. I want to go back. But yeah, they had a Fnac store and I used to go there a lot. They had a great selection of English books and I was always eyeing one or two books, but I eventually only bought two, and those are Heartless by Marissa Meyer and They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. I bought both of these books at the same time, I think, and I think it was closer to my, like, the end of my semester, and I don't know, I always, like, every time I look at these books, I just remember my time in Belgium and I just miss it so much. It was such a fun and different and unique experience. And I also loved both of these books. This is probably one of my favorite books of all time and I got it in Leuven in Belgium. And also it's so funny to look back at the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019. It was before I started my booktube channel, a couple of months before, and it's so funny because I was there for 5 months and I only bought 2 books in those 5 months. I literally bought no other book. I went to so many places. I went to the Netherlands and Germany and France and so many countries, and I was stumbling upon books all the time, and I controlled myself enough to only buy 2 books. I am actually so proud of that, and I know for sure that if I did that experience of Erasmus today, I would have bought so many books and I would have no money to eat. And yeah, it's just funny to see my self-control like 3 years ago. I'm actually so proud of myself, and yeah, love these 2 books. So yeah, that concludes my favorite memories with books video. I love doing this and going down memory lane and just looking at my book collection and seeing what books sparked any memories for me. And I honestly had a couple of more, but these are the main ones that every time I look at them, I just remember all these memories and just where I was and what I was doing and who I was, and it's just so funny to look back. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't. Also comment down below one of your favorite memories with books and if you have any. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys on my next one. Bye!